Okay, so I know that the difference between jail and prison is that jail is held is reserved for people who commit crimes and until they're like overnight, and prison is reserved for people who are actually convicted of crimes. And I also know that a decent percentage of people are in prison for nonviolent drug offenses.
I know it's very expensive. I know people wait a long time to go to trial for like minor things. People go away for like minor drug infractions. I don't know.
So I don't know a whole lot about the American justice system, but I'm aware based on the things that I'm doing in various research classes involving, drug usage and things like that, that a lot more people are being incarcerated than probably should be. I don't actually know what the difference between a jail and a prison was. I was unaware that there was any difference, to be completely honest with you. But I know that the rate of sending people to prison in America is going up, and then a lot more people are being sent to jail for menial things than they should be.
What do I know about the criminal justice system? I know that a massive number of people are being incarcerated. I know that that number continues to rise yearly, and I know that we need serious reform to our criminal justice system. I know that overcrowding is a very big problem, and I know that mandatory minimums are inherently racist.
I think the most obvious positive is that it's an evidence-based system. Nobody should be forced to face any kind of punishment unless you can produce ample evidence that they have actually committed the crime that they're being accused of, and that we assume people are innocent until proven guilty, and that kind of goes along with the same line of logic.
Positives? I can think of a lot of negatives. Positives? I honestly, I really don't know what positives would be about the criminal justice system.
So there's not a whole ton of positives, but I know that we do have some decent programs to try and help people once they, to get out of prison, or once they get out of prison, like as far as, GED earning programs, things like that. They're not super prevalent, and there's not a lot of them, but I know that they do exist. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure. I know there's not that many, though.
What are some positives about the criminal justice system? I know that there is a need for a justice system in a society because we have to abide by rules. So I believe that there are a number of people incarcerated that should be incarcerated.
I think definitely the most obvious, or for me, the most important negative is that people go to jail for extended periods of time for nonviolent drug offenses. I'm a firm believer that drugs should be, if not legalized, certain ones should be at least decriminalized because, I don't know what to say.
Like I said before, people go away for minor drug infractions, especially for marijuana. If they have a certain amount, they go to prison. I don't know for how long, but there's also a lot of controversy between people going away to prison and then others think that they should receive rehabilitation instead. It's very expensive. I don't know what else.
So a lot of people are being sent to prison for menial crimes, and I know I do a lot of research specifically on drug usage and things like that. So I know that illicit drug use is a very common reason for people to be sent to prison, even if it's just minor drug usage. And it's hard because a lot of the times, these people actually do need help, and not necessarily the kind that you're going to find in prison systems. And I think that's where we're lacking, because if we provided more social services and things like that to get people, the help that they need mentally and drug usage wise, people wouldn't be ending up in prisons in the first place.
What are some negatives about the criminal justice system? I know that mass incarceration is a very big problem today. There are many people in jail who shouldn't be in jail. I know that our criminal justice system doesn't run as efficiently as it should. One of the examples being death row. It's astonishing how many number of death row people are actually found not guilty.
As far as I know, mandatory minimum sentences are in relation to drug laws, saying that if you're caught with whatever amount of drug, there's a minimum amount of time that there's minimum punishment or amount of time that you can spend in prison, and I disagree with that. I mean, because I don't think that there should be extensive penalties for drug use. This should be treated more as like a health concern than a criminal concern.
Mandatory minimums. It sounds like if you commit a certain crime, you have to go away to prison for a certain amount of time. I would agree with them for certain crimes. To me, it's a very gray area. It really just depends on the crime you're committing.
And this is the minimum that you have to set prison time based on the crime. But I think it should kind of be on a case-by-case basis. I really don't think you can overlap and say, like, okay, just because this is what you did, this is the sentence you should be serving, because every crime that's committed, I feel, is a little bit different, and they're not necessarily all for the same reasons.
I know that there's different levels of mandatory minimums on a state and federal basis. I know that mandatory minimums are usually inherently racially biased, and that they give out maximum penalties for crimes that are very minor.
I do not necessarily think that they're going to pass any kind of extensive reform. And while I do think that they may believe that reform is necessary, certainly not to the extent that Democrats do, but I also can't see them passing any kind of extensive reform in the near future.
I would say yes, because Republicans are about cutting government spending. I mean, I know they're tough on crime as well, but I don't know, I think so.
This is a difficultly worded question, I feel like, because it kind of presents a lot of issues about, Democrats versus Republicans and things like that, and what kind of changes the Democrat Party wants to make. And I feel like it's kind of overlapping, and I don't really know too much about Republican views on reform in prison systems, but I know that there probably isn't one if I have heard about it. I don't know if the Democrats want to do anything different. Yeah.
I don't believe that a Republican-controlled Congress will pass a criminal justice reform system bill, because right now Congress is so polarized that the Republicans and Democrats don't work well together. However, I do believe that most Republicans are aware that there is a need for an overhaul of the criminal justice system.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things is just the rescheduling of certain drugs under the CSA, mainly marijuana. Not necessarily full legalization, but at least decriminalization. I don't believe that for a drug that is arguably less harmful than tobacco and alcohol, that people should be serving extended prison sentences for.
What would I do to change it? Like I said before, people who go away for minor drug crimes, instead of receiving a harsh sentence, they should receive rehabilitation. I think that's more effective. And I would also say that marijuana should be removed from the Schedule I drug list.
So I think that the first thing that needs to be done is we need to start looking into other options for people when they commit crimes, and not necessarily just sending them to prison. Maybe doing some sort of health screenings, things like that, and what kind of help social service-wise we can provide for people, as opposed to just sending them to jail. Because a lot of times it's not necessarily sending them to jail that's going to help them in the long run, but giving them other help from other sources. And I think that's probably the biggest change that needs to be made.
I would like mandatory minimums to be less strict for nonviolent drug offenders. I would put more funding into rehabilitation programs such as drug courts, and I would like to see the number of incarcerated people go down significantly.